subscribers. Welcome to another episode of Peep Game TV Live. I'm your man Shadi, and today we're going to discuss were we really taught the truth about slavery? And if we wasn't, why wasn't we? Why weren't we taught the truth about slavery? It appears to me that many of us are only able to function on what happened to us after slavery. It appears that many of us seem to blame the majority of our problems on the effects of slavery. And we were told that we were slaves for 400 years. Mind you, there's not a nationality walking the earth that has never been enslaved at some point in their history. So tell me, why is it so important for so called black people to be reminded of being slaves? You know, it became a part of who we are. If you look up African American, it says, descendants of enslaved people. My whole view on this thing is, what were we prior to slaves? What did we do? What was our contribution to the world? That's more of an answer that we have to start, looking into. I want you to know that Peep Game TV is here to unveil the game that has been played on us for over 200 and something years. We've been being gamed, we've been being played. Have you asked yourself, why do so called black people have to march? Why do so called black people have to fight the justice system? I mean, just think about it. I really want you to really think about, why are we, along with our Latino brothers and sisters, fighting a system and trying to infiltrate the system, and we still seem to be getting the same results? Okay, every now and then we get a win. We somehow come off, some people get acquitted, or some people get released from prison after serving a certain amount of years. However, let's look at the laws though. Let's look at, a person goes to prison for a crime. Now, the same person has a record, and that crime follows him or her throughout their life. Now, they put other laws together that hinders the individual from being able to progress in certain areas. There's certain areas that you're unable to be able to proceed into because you had a criminal record. I mean, people, we have to really examine this. We have to look at this from, not with our two eyes, but our third eye. The third eye meaning the mind. Let's really stop getting all emotional over situations and start approaching these situations from an angle of logic. It's been far too long that we as a people, so-called black African American people of color have been treated in a manner that is inhumane. If you have to fight for civil rights, what actually happened to your human rights, your God given rights, your right to govern yourself, your right to economic liberty without any inequality? What happened to that? Why are we fighting a battle when we complain, many of us, about, oh, it's too many, you know, it's too many white people in government. It's too many white people in this field. It's too many white businessmen. It's too many white this and that. And mind you, this has nothing to do with black or white. It's not about black or white for me. It's about a few people knowing the truth, having the truth, concealing the truth, and having us operate from a mindset of thinking we're making progress when we're actually being held back, when we're actually being used as a commodity to make other people money. And, I mean, what do you call that? Let's think about what slavery was about. Slavery was about economics. It was about a certain people being able to make a boatload of money off of another people because they didn't have to pay them, or they paid them really low wages. Now, let's think about what's going on now. Let's think about those of us who have to get up every morning to go to work. We go to work our 8 hours, 10 hours, 12 hours, 16 hours, whatever it is that we work. Now we have to chip some of that money off to Uncle Sam. We have to break Uncle Sam off. Who is Uncle Sam? The government. We have to break them off with some of that money, somewhere like 30% of what you make. So if you're a person, you know, making 50,000, by the time they chip you off, you somewhere, you know, what, 25,000, somewhere in there, maybe even lower. And then, okay, they give you a kickback from that money when it comes income tax time. But mind you, that's still some type of contract that has to be signed, numbers worked out, and sometimes you don't get anything. Sometimes you don't get any money. Sometimes you end up owing money. Now, as a people, as a logical person, why should you have to work 5, 7 days a week, not having time for your children, in most cases, if you're a single parent, and then you end up with less money? Well, let's go this route. Not enough money to pay your bills, plus have, other necessities met. I mean, what do you call that? I really want you all to think. Like, We don't even determine the wages that we're going to be paid. How many years have we as so-called American citizens been fighting to increase the minimum wage? And what is the blowback? Oh, it's going to be too much for the company. The company's not going to be able to pay the people the money. I mean, let's look at what's going on around us, people. Everything has went up. Food, housing, interest rates, rents, everything gone up. But what hasn't gone up? Your wages. So, if that's the case, now the good trick is peep the game. The game is this. Let's tell a certain people that they've been slaves for 400 years. Mind you, America hasn't even existed for 400 years. You know, if America supposedly was calling for the independence in 1776, that makes about 247 years. So where did we get being enslaved for over 400 years? Where did that come from? Okay, now let's look at where we are now. Not just us melanated people or us so-called black people. Let's look at people in this United States all over. Okay, some people get a few breaks. All right, the way they designed it to put the trickery and to put us against each other, they make concessions for white people, so called white people. They make a few concessions. You go in, you get a better interest rate. You go, you get you know, a house, and they'll work with you a little more better than they will work with a so-called person of color or black. However, you so-called white people, you still have to go to work too. You still have to pay your taxes. You still have to pay the increase in gas, the increase in food, the increase in rents, the increase in interest rates. You still have to pay all of these things. Now, as I was saying, the game that they're playing is, let's keep the people separated. Let's make it black and white. Let's make it that the white people supposedly are better than the black people. They're smarter than the black people. They're less violent than the black people. Now they have us playing against each other. And it's a 2%. 2% rich people who want to stay rich and wealthy, who actually controls the government. Now, here we are saying, oh, we're fighting Democratic and Republican. Oh, I don't want to vote for the Republican. I don't want to vote for Trump because Trump is going to do this. I don't want to vote for Biden because Biden's going to do this. Listen, the reality, people, is they're all together. It's an illusion. They're playing us like suckers. We have to realize that our fight is not with each other, black and white or any other ethnicity. Our fight is with this so called lawmakers, the laws that puts people in situations and then blame the people for the situations they're in. And then they have this saying, oh, pull yourself up by the bootstraps. which means to me, just make it work yourself. You know, you can do it by yourself. You don't need any help. And if that's not the biggest lie that I ever heard, everyone needs help. First of all, none of us come to this reality, come to existence without help of a mother and father, without two people coming together, giving birth, and bringing us into life. Then, after we have became a, a, a child when we are born into life, we still have to rely on somebody. We still have to rely on both parents or whatever parent is actually there for us. So, how can we keep saying, as a people, that we can do it alone? No one can make the necessary changes that we need alone. We have to be able to work together and function in a manner that causes or minimizes us getting caught up in situations that can jeopardize our so called freedom. And freedom, if you really examine the word, is free your dome. Free your dome. Stop thinking the way you've been thinking. Many of us keep trying the same old things. We keep saying everything that went wrong with us is about slavery. And that's not so. What went wrong with us is not about slavery. It's about being put in a position where we, as the so-called blacks, African American people of color, don't even claim a nationality. We're not American because if we were American, they wouldn't have had to put the 14th Amendment together. They wouldn't have to make the 1780 Naturalization Act. So that alone tells us that there was something wrong with the whole ideology behind us being classified as so called citizens. If we're citizens and we have equal rights under the law, then why are so many people that look like this out there being activists? Why are so many people who look like this, even with money, still getting caught up in situations where their money can't even buy them out? Why is this? I really want you guys to start freeing your dome. We have to be free of the games that is being played on all of us as people in this so-called United States. If let's just now, I know we're talking about the slavery. We're talking about what we lied to or what we told the truth about slavery. All of this is relevant because me personally, I feel like the actions are still there. We they removed the chains on your body and put the chains on your brain. So now you can't think your way out of what you're dealing with because they've locked you in to a way of thinking where it's so difficult for you to be able to overcome that type of mentality. Like, you know, we have individuals who are really stuck on the race. Race is what? Running, racing. It's a competition. So, how did they get us caught up where we are actually racing against one another, trying to outdo one another instead of trying to work along with and help each other as humans? I mean, you have wars going on in other parts of the world. I mean, you have what is it? The Palestinians, who they call in Gaza, and uh, the Israelis. They're fighting. Why do you think people fight against each other? What are Why do two people in close proximity have to fight? What is it about? What is the purpose? What's behind it? The majority of the fights is for equality, which all people deserve to have equality. When one people or one particular power structure tries to deny another people equal rights, that's inhumane. That's who need to be checked. All the individuals, no matter what country, if they're not allowing people to have their God given rights of equality, being equal in all things, the right to live free of being restrained by a people outside of you, the right to govern yourselves, the right to write your own laws, the right to put your own constitution together. That's the rights of humans. And if we can't see that, people, we're really not looking with, as I said, that third eye. We're not freeing the dome. We're accepting a way of life that is unjust. It's an unjust way of life. The way of life that we are being exposed to and have been exposed to, not just here, all over the world. We need to be able to work beyond the greed and the selfishness and the power hungry manipulators that only care about money. I mean, when you look at what's going on, okay, now we're going to get back to why I say that the slavery is still in effect, and to some degree, we all in it because we are financially enslaved. Many of us, if we lose our jobs, we will end up homeless. And then we lose our jobs. Look what has to happen. Now you have to apply for unemployment. Mind you, it's money that you have worked for that has been taken out of your check. That, if they didn't take it, that's money that you possibly could have put away to have anyway. Going back to the taxes, the outrageous taxes, that too. So do you think the money that's being taken out of your check, the wages that are being paid to the majority of the individuals, you don't think that's a form of slavery, a form of control? Because slavery is not just about brutality and hanging and raping and the things that we were taught. It's about being caught up in a situation where you're unable to progress in the manner that you're truly capable of because you have restraints on you. You have certain restraints that have been forced upon you, put upon you, and you're unable to maneuver through them. Grant you, there are people who are able to maneuver through it. And kudos and thumbs up to them. However, how many people in the so called inner cities are living day to day? You're so caught up in your everyday life, you can't even possibly think about what can be done to make your situation better because you're too caught up in trying to survive. Do you actually think that's an accident? Do you actually think that situations occurring and the way that everything unravels is by chance? Or do you think there's a few individuals getting up in a so-called Congress? Okay, let's talk about Congress and House of Representatives and things and those individuals. How many of you have voted for senators or congressmen in your state and you're still not happy? You're still suffering. They still haven't delivered what they said they were going to deliver. I mean, I'm I'm tired. I have no faith whatsoever in this so-called government. I'm going to be straight up with you. No faith whatsoever. I wouldn't waste my time voting. And grant you, this is here's the mind game. Here's the mind game what they do to the so-called blacks or African American or people of color. Oh, Martin Luther King march. People died for you to have the right to vote. This is how they keep us locked and loaded, voting for people who does nothing for us. And they got us believing, oh, this is the best country in the world. How do you know? How do you know that this is the best country in the world when you haven't been to every country in the world? How do you fix your lips to say something like that? Many of you say, oh, this is the best country in the world. You got all the freedoms you want. Freedoms for what? Freedoms of what? Certain things, if you got freedoms, okay, let's talk about freedoms now. How free are you when you have people like Whoopi Goldberg, uh, Kyrie Irving, Kanye West, Nick Cannon, said something that was offensive to Jewish people? I mean, said that something similar, if I'm not mistaken, that black people were the first Jews. How offensive should that be to any person? And unless black don't exist, unless it's something about that black word that they find uh, offensive, then if that's the case, tell us, tell us, Jewish people, tell us. Look, the black don't exist. So the first Jewish people wasn't black because black don't exist. Then tell us that. Don't attack people calling them anti-Semitic when the majority of us don't even know what anti-Semitic means. Grant you, I love all people. I love humanity. And I believe that it's capable or it's possible to have peace on earth. I believe that. I'm an optimist. I believe it's possible. However, it's only possible if you get these so called, I want to say, treacherous, manipulative, these type of people out of power by us as the people coming together, stopping the nonsense of this so called racial discrimination, this so called, you know, black and white, uh, nonsense. I mean, at the end of the day, we're all human beings and we all want the same thing. We all want freedom, justice. We want to be free to live in peace. Justice when something happens in our life for our family, and equality in all things. We want that. We all want that. So let's find a way to get around this other thing, even if it means replacing this here so called government with a new one. I mean, it's in the Constitution. You had a right. You had a right to replace it if it's not working for you. Why do you keep considering or keep trying to knock the door down or open the door or maneuver in a manner and the door keep getting slammed out or you keep getting thrown out the door or they lock the door. So why don't we just decide, look, let's do what the so-called 13 colonies did. Come together with our three branches of government, put our constitution together, have our public inauguration, and put our government together. And then let's have some checks and balances. The problem I see is that the United States is not being properly checked. They have no balance. They have it has went to their mind that they're the superpower, that no one can tell them what to do. They do what they want to do. And that's no good for no one. A parent starts off with a parent that checks them. A child without any structure becomes out of control. I mean, it's just a natural order of things that if you have power that go unchecked, it becomes out of control. So the only thing that I can think of that will be conducive for humankind to make the world a better place is for there to be a new government, a government that cares about the people more than profit. I mean, when you really examine what's going on, you realize that everything here is about profit. It's about it's. I mean, you say it's a free country. Now you buying water. You're paying for water. So actually tell me what is free. You dying. When you die, you have to pay to die. So let's stop this, people. Let's stop buying into these games and these slogans that have gotten us, you know, mentally enslaved because we keep accepting that what we hear and what we've been taught is the truth. That the same government that's been here supposedly in slavery, it's the same type of government that's here now. What changed about the government? You know, post slavery. What changed? I mean, we got to get it together as 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 humans, as human beings, not just us as so-called black people or African Americans, which I don't nowadays identify with either because I realize that those are political constructs, which constricts you politically by claiming those names. And we'll go into that some other time, and we'll get more in depth with that. However, if you stroll down on some of the episodes, the Peep Game episodes, you could get some of the information about that. About the whole Black African American thing, that type of you know label. Some people say misnomers, whatever it is. It's not a nationality because there's not a land called black. There's not a land called African American. There's not a land called colored. I mean, you have Chinese, you have China. You have Russia, you have Russians. You have Indians, you have India. I mean, so forth and so on. So us as so-called black people, so-called people of color, so-called African Americans, and even when you claim American, you have to realize too that we were here prior to America existing. So that means that we had a name for this land prior to America being called America, prior to the British, Portuguese, Spaniards all coming together and forming the colonies and colonizing us, by the way, having us be under their rule, under their laws, which only discombobulates us. And as I said before, this is no diss to white people or any other people. It's just that every other people has their own government. So I'm just saying, what about us? What's wrong with us that we don't have our own government? That many of us, can't even conceive governing ourselves. I mean, it's almost sad. Well, it is sad, but it's almost like insanity. It's like we insane? Are we really what we've been taught, that we were brought here from Africa and we were uncivilized, and because we were made slaves, slavery civilized us? I mean, people, do you really believe that? Do you really believe that being under somebody else's rule, being under somebody else's dictatorship, being under somebody else's law and so called order civilized you? I mean, look at our youth now. Look at how they are in the streets. Look at what they're doing. Look at our young rappers, the women, the men, the young men. Look what they're talking about. Do you think the murder, the sex, the drugs, do you think that what we've been taught and this whole civilized us caused us to be civilized? Do you think the actions that we see with our young people is civilized? Or do you somewhere deep down in your heart, deep in your mind, in the back of your mind, believe that it's a better way? It's something that we can do that can make our lives better. And if you think that, and if you believe that, then what is it? What can we actually do that can make our lives better? Look, we've tried marching, we've tried protesting, we've tried, hey, having the first so called black president. We tried that. We had a so called person, looks like this, few shades lighter, having supposedly the top office in the land. And what really changed? What really changed as far as the dynamics of the way things are? Are we, and I'm talking about these people, are we doing better as a whole? Not a Oprah Winfrey, not a Jay-Z. You know, we're talking about, are we doing better as a whole for the lower level of people, the everyday working people? Are we doing better? Are we making the necessary progress as a people? If we're not, then we have to do something different. How do we expect to change and make a better life for our children and their children if we continue to do the same things as our grandparents and their parents did? The marching, the protesting, all of that was time. Those times have passed. It has to be something better now. Has to be something that's going to be concrete. That's something that's going to shake the world up. We have the ability to do that. We just have to make the necessary changes. within ourselves. See, there are things that we can do that it has nothing to do with who's in office. There's things that we can do as individuals. Work on our inner beings. It's too many of us caught up on what we look on the outside, and we're walking around empty on the inside. We're empty on the inside because we're not working on building character, becoming better individuals. This is why the suicide rate is high, because everybody, well, not everybody, there's a lot of people looking for other people to make them feel good about themselves, to make them feel worthy, when the true beginning of growth has to start within. You have to look into yourself and say, I'm worthy. I'm worthy of better. I'm worthy of more. That has to start individually. That can't be, you know, recognition, expecting recognition from other people. We can't continue to do that. We can't continue to look for recognition outside of ourselves until we first recognize ourselves. First, we got to recognize who we are as a people. What is our nationality? What were we prior to so called slavery? What was this land called prior to the so called colonizers, aka slave masters, before they came here? What was it called? These are questions that has to be answered. These are questions that I want each of you to find time to seek the answers. Seek the answers of who are we? Who are we really? Because we're not black. We're not African American. We're not people of color. Legally, we're not. We know that there's a lot of promotion of black excellence. We know there's a lot of promotion of black businesses and things of that nature. However, there's also a lot of things that black is tied to that's negative, you know, as far as black crime, blacks are unhealthy, all of those things. Blacks are high in incarceration, so blacks can't stick together. Blacks hate themselves. I mean, so all of these things are things that we have power over. We have the ability to make the changes. And it's going to start within ourselves individually and then ourselves as a collective. And grant you, as I said, this has nothing to do with not caring about other people, white people, whatever people. It has to do with restoring the original organic law of life. If we were so called people that look like this, were the first people on the planet Earth, which the stories has been twisted now, and they saying, the Europeans were first, and it matters to an extent. It matters when it comes to claiming rights over the land, claiming the sovereignty over the land. It matters when it comes to that. It matters when having ownership because you were the first to be there, that's when it matters. Because if we were here prior to anyone else coming here, then that means we have rights to claim the land because we were first here. Now, it's the same as if you were in a house and someone came to visit you and you was living there first, and then all of a sudden you let them stay with you a couple of weeks, and then they want to put their name on the mortgage and remove your name. How would you feel about that? You know? So that's a similar analogy of what happened to us. That's why the slavery thing being brought from Africa to here is so important, and it's being used to manipulate us to make us feel like we don't have any rights to this land. I mean, how many of you have felt like, well, we from Africa? Where in Africa? Where in Africa are you from? I mean, there's a bunch of states over there, over 50. So which state did you come from? Tell me. African American? What part of Africa did you come from? What part of Africa do you belong to? And it's not a point of, you know, our African brothers and sisters and all of that is not a point of that. It's a point of rectifying a wrong. We talk about reparations. We talk about we want to repair things. Then let's repair it. Let's repair it properly. Let's repair it by doing what we know needs to be done. And for those of you who don't know, as I said, just look at your lives. And if your life is fine, look at the life of your loved ones. Look at your family members. Look at what they're going through. Look at your neighborhoods. Look at your surroundings. We have a tendency to, many of us, and I'm not going to say all of us, many of us have a tendency to become oblivious to what's going on around us because we're locked in our own little world. And that's all that matters. No, we are not going to be happy and it's going to have peace until we start being about us and not about just me. We have to make the necessary changes within ourselves. We have to make the necessary changes as a collective. We have to start asking questions and stop accepting everything that is said to us, everything that we've been taught. We really going to have to unlearn a lot of what we've been taught, because a lot of what we've been taught was adding links to the chain on our brain. And that chain has us limited to what we are really capable of doing and being. We have to acquire the knowledge that has been intentionally stashed away from us. There's knowledge out here, and it's not new knowledge. It's knowledge that has been, as I said, intentionally pushed to the side, pushed away from us. Because by not knowing who we are, we can never be who we are capable of being. That is one of the most important things that we have to realize who we are and who we're not. It's our time. It's time for us to let go of some of this unhealthy behavior. Let's start dealing with, we know our children are dying and killing each other because some of it is based on not having the proper upbringing. Some of it is based on what they're learning or not learning in school. Some of it is based on what they're listening to. And some of it is based on what they're watching. So, with that being said, we have to start demanding from ourselves a higher level or a higher state of being. No longer shall we be accepting our lower state. It's time for us to rise to a higher level of godlike thinking. You know, uh, many of us who are religious, we look to the sky and we pray to a higher power. Okay, if we're praying to a higher power, let's start reaching into ourselves and start rising to that higher level so that we can become one with that higher power. We can't come one with the higher power if we keep thinking and acting and moving on our lower levels of self. We got to realize that there's a, an enemy. We might as well say it. It's an enemy who don't want to see the change. They don't want to see the growth. They don't want to, or let's say not let's remove enemy. Let's say adversary. There's adversary that's trying to block us from doing what it is that we need to do. And that's their goal. That's their right as who they are. However, and you say they, when I say they, I say the ones who are writing the laws that are causing the hardship on individuals who they feel that they are only good for what they could get out of them. Those are the they that I'm talking about. The law writers, the lawmakers at this point that are writing laws that's writing us out of the laws or writing laws that put a limitation on us. We have to make the difference. We have to consider what is the alternative. What is it? The alternative is our own government. That's the alternative. That's the only thing that I can see that can put us in a position that we don't have to stop. We can stop begging, stop pleading, stop asking, and start demanding. That's the only way I see. Without that, we're going to still be begging, screaming, and crying. So, with that being said, This is the show for tonight. Stay tuned for next week and tell some friends, tell some family members. I want to have some guests so we can really talk about what do we need to do as a people, as a whole, as a community, you know, as human beings. What do we need to do to make this world better for all of us? You know, I love me some us. I love me some we. And this is not just about me, it's about us.